Hello, Canada. Oh, yeah, I got my mic on. Excellent. And welcome to another episode of the Maple Pill. As always, I'm your host, Matt McKeever. Hope you guys are having a good Wednesday so far. We're 8 episodes in now to the Maple Pill, which is fantastic. Haven't got canceled yet, so that's wonderful. We've got a lot of stories to cover today, so I'm excited to jump into it with you guys. But as always, I'd love to hear what's currently on your radar. Jump in that comment section, smash the like button if you're enjoying these videos, hit subscribe if you're new to the channel. And if you are new to the idea of the Maple Pill, essentially the idea here is I'm going to take you through a full course, a 5-course meal of pills. We're going to cover the blue pill, the red pill, the black pill, the clown pill, and then finally focus on the white pill, where hopefully we can find some actual solutions to all the craziness that is, I guess, modern times we find ourselves in Canada. So I guess a precursor, I'm actually feeling pretty good about tonight's show. I feel like my white pills are actually, there's more white pills than just about any other stories that I'm going to be covering today. So again, not that the world just magically fixed all its problems, but I don't know, I'm just feeling good about it. But anyways, let's jump into a couple of quick updates before we start hitting the full course of stories I've got for you guys. And as always, links in the video description down below. So everything we're going to talk about, you guys jump into those links, do your own research. Don't let this show be the end of your journey. Really just allow it to be the beginning of going down the rabbit hole, as they say. All right, so quick update here. The first one I just wanted to hit on is from CBC News, and this was just kind of a presser from Justin Trudeau. Trudeau says antiviral treatment won't make up for low vaccination rates among children. So depending upon where you're getting your data, it seems like maybe 35% of Canadian children aged 5 to 11, I think, they're saying have got at least 2 shots of the vaccine. And so speaking to reporters on Parliament Hill, Trudeau said Pfizer's Paxlovid, which will be available to a limited number of adults starting this week and next, is a useful tool in the toolkit, but it won't make up for the sagging vaccination rate amongst children. And I'm not going to dwell on this a lot. If you guys want to see my opinions on it, go back and watch the last couple of episodes where I really don't hold back on it. But I think the biggest question I've got here is really how effective is the vaccination essentially for young children at reducing transmission? And I don't think it's overwhelmingly obvious that this is going to really make an impact to Canada's overall reaction and Canada's overall experience with the COVID-19 pandemic. But again, that's my take on it. I'd love to hear your thoughts and your opinions. If you got counterpoints or counter articles, share them in the video description down below. But I'm just really getting tired of Trudeau's constant rhetoric, essentially just villainizing the unvaccinated. Whether you're a small child, whether you're just a free-thinking adult, he seems to really dislike it when you don't follow along with this narrative. Moving on from that, though, I want to hit upon this Maclean's article, which was talking about how effective Newfoundland has been in regards to getting their vaccination rates up amongst 5 to 11-year-olds. In fact, they're at 75%, which is the highest in Canada. And again, encourage you guys to go read the entire article. But essentially, 74.7% of all children aged 5 to 11 currently have it. Here's kind of a breakdown of all the different provinces, and we can see Alberta appears to be the lowest. Again, it's kind of interesting because the sum of this would actually make it look like there's a lot more Canadian children that are vaccinated. Or I guess this is, sorry, for first doses here. But a couple of key points I just want to hit upon is the approach Newfoundland took when trying to get young children vaccinated. I don't know if I love some of the framing here. At the same time, they sent letters to all parents and things like that. I've got no issues with that. But for those in her province, a big motivator is seeing loved ones. The inability to see grandparents and great-grandparents has been devastating for a lot of Newfoundland and Labrador children. The province also launched an advertising campaign that emphasized the message that vaccinating children helps reduce COVID-19 from spreading to friends and families, while also tugging at heartstrings. Because my nan needs help with her cookies was the tagline on one, featuring a girl behind a cookie sheet laden with dough, while another showed a boy with his grandfather playing a video game with the caption, because my pop needs to play Minecraft. Bridger also points to the province's culture. Its population is relatively small, and peer pressure both online and within communities is a strong factor in getting people to accept public health measures, including vaccinations, she believes. And so I don't think that this is particularly nefarious or anything like that, but I still just don't love the approach of focusing on getting people to emotionally react to making medical decisions, nor do I like the idea that peer pressure is one of the primary drivers to get people to make medical decisions. I'd much rather just people make informed decisions for themselves and be allowed their bodily autonomy. But again, that's just crazy Matt, the libertarian or the anarchist, really, these days. So let's get into the first blue pill of the story of the day. And we're going to be talking about inflation as well as the Bank of Canada. So in case you guys somehow missed this headline, inflation rate in Canada hits 30-year high. This is from True North, but again, this was on pretty much every media news outlet. Canada's inflation rate, let's zoom in here for you guys. Canada's inflation rate for the month of December was up 4.8% compared to last year, representing the highest the highest the country has seen since 1991. Prices for gas rose more than 33% compared to last year's figures, accompanied by record inflation numbers at the grocery store. Food prices nationwide are up more than 5%, with the cost of buying meat now 9% more expensive and the cost of dairy products 3% more expensive. Now, when it comes to CPI and inflation in general, I'm not alone in thinking that there's often a lot of shenanigans behind the scenes and how they manipulate the data in order to have it essentially say whatever they'd like their narrative to fit. And I'd love to hear from you guys. What's your personal experiences when it comes to food inflation? We've seen reports that the average Canadian may end up spending $1,000 more per year on groceries. And that certainly isn't an insignificant number, I think, for the average Canadian. So again, love to hear what your thoughts and opinion are. This is a great article, though, highlights a couple points from Pierre Poilievre as well. And I really do appreciate the fact that he seems to be one of the few politicians that's really beating the drum on having these concerns. We covered it in a previous story earlier in the week, but I also think he might slowly be becoming a Bitcoiner, because in one of his speeches, he essentially referenced the Bitcoin standard and what money or what money technology is really supposed to represent. And one thing that I wanted to hit here that I don't remember this hitting my radar earlier in the year, but in June 2021, the Parliamentary Budget Office reported that the federal government would not return to a balanced budget until 2070. And the same estimate, the PBO projected that the federal government would tack on another 2.7 trillion in debt before returning to a balanced budget. So let's just think about that. This is 2022. And we're saying that we're probably not going to hit a balanced budget until 2070. So it's probably going to be another 48 years before we balance our budget. I'm just curious how many individuals, how many businesses can go running a deficit for 48 years without significant consequences? I think that there's going to be significant consequences if we as a country continue down this path. And this really should be concerning, because at some point in time, we're going to have to figure out what to do with these trillions of dollars in debt, because no society, no country in the history of the world has been able to just run a deficit indefinitely and continue to exist as a free nation. But moving on, just want to hit upon another article here from National News Watch, again, hitting upon the fact that we've hit, a high in regards to inflation. And again, link in the video description down below if you guys want to check that one out. But one other little point from the Toronto Star here was the year-over-year change in prices in December outpaced gains in wages over the same stretch. Statistics Canada said wages rose 2.6% between December 2020 and last month, meaning Canadians saw a drop in their purchasing power. Yeah, absolutely. I don't believe anyone's really seeing their wages keep up with inflation unless you're self-employed, unless you're essentially able to increase the prices you're charging your customer. But again, we're seeing this common narrative now in society where when a business does adapt to these higher inflationary environments, that they're naturally demonized, right? That they're profit-seeking, that they're trying to squeeze the Canadian consumer, when honestly, a lot of these companies, and again, I'm not saying that all major corporations are great, but a lot of these companies, especially small businesses, they're just reacting to the monetary policy and what's going on in the broader economy, which they have absolutely zero control over. But politicians and those passing budgets and passing these giant deficits and just having the printing press go burr, the Bank of Canada, they actually do have control over this. And they're supposed to be keeping inflation in check at 2%. And while I don't think we can even really believe the 4.8% they're selling us, a lot of people will say, as a rule of thumb, just double it. And that's likely what real inflation's closer to. And they're supposed to be trying to keep it at 2%. And if your wages aren't keeping up at 4.8%, you are absolutely losing out economically year over year at this point in time. And I honestly don't see anything dramatically impacting inflation on the horizon for the better. If anything, I personally think inflation is going to get worse. But I'd love to hear your thoughts, your opinions. And kind of moving in, the last part of the blue pill story I wanted to cover here was from BNN Bloomberg. And so this is talking about Scotiabank essentially adjusting their expectations for interest rate increases here going into 2022. I personally think this is too hawkish, and I'll share with you my thoughts and opinions. But let's first talk about what Bank of Nova Scotia sees. So, Bank of Nova Scotia says Canada's central bank will begin an aggressive round of monetary tightening next week to control inflation, bringing its policy rate to above pre-pandemic levels by the end of this year. The Toronto-based lender is now projecting the Bank of Canada will hike its overnight policy rate to 2% in 2022 from the current emergency level of 0.25%, according to a report published Wednesday, shortly after Statistics Canada said inflation hit its highest in 3 decades. So understand this would be a dramatic shift in our monetary policy, and this would definitely impact the average person with a variable rate mortgage, right? We're essentially looking at a 1.75% increase in interest rates, according to what bank or a Scotiabank is expecting here. Now, if you were to ask my personal honest opinion, and I'm no expert here, this is definitely not financial advice, but I personally don't see more than 2 or 3 rate hikes, 75 basis points tops. I would say that, if by the end of the year we're at 1% versus their projected 2%, that's kind of the max I personally could see it. Now, one of the reasons that I've talked to you guys in the past about this is just literally everyone, I mean, everyone is addicted to cheap debt. Now, extended beyond that, Canadians in general are using their principal residence, their home, as their primary savings vehicle. This is really where the vast majority of Canadians are storing their net worth. For the better or worse long term, we'll find out. But understand that a dramatic increase in interest rates will reduce affordability dramatically for new buyers. And if we see all of a sudden the real estate market start to plateau or even taper off here and see prices reduced, it's not going to make for popular politics, in my opinion. Now, again, there are first-time buyers that would love to see prices at least catch their breath, if not be reduced. But I just don't think that our central bankers are going to have the confidence to be this hawkish. I think the economy is still very weak, despite the fact that we literally have almost free money at this point in time. So again, that's my thoughts. That's my hot take. I'd love to get your thoughts and your perspective. Let me know in the comment section. But let's move on to the red pill story of the day. And so what we're going to be touching upon here is a recent survey about Canadians and their opinions of the unvaccinated. This is really concerning. We covered a story earlier this week about Americans and their opinions of the unvaccinated. And spoiler alert, Canadians really aren't that much different than Democrats when it comes to their opinions of the unvaccinated. And this is concerning. This is one of the big reasons that I'm so frustrated by the language coming out of our prime minister, his demonization of the unvaccinated, because a lot of people do look, in my opinion, wrongly towards politicians and, the prestige media, the corporate press. I'm trying to think. Someone shared with me a different term on a recent video, but essentially, mainstream media, corporate press is my preferred term. And the fact that they're so comfortable demonizing the unvaccinated is spilling over into the general collective consciousness here in Canadians. And I just don't think anyone's the better for this. But let's cover the story. This is from the National Post. More than 1 in 4 Canadians support jail time for the unvaccinated poll finds. In the Maru poll, 27% of respondents say it would be okay to jail the unvaccinated for up to 5 days. Literally just for making your own medical decision, 27% apparently of your fellow Canucks would be okay with you going to jail for 5 days. Now, one, this seems like it would be a logistics nightmare, and it just seems completely unjustifiable, in my opinion. And we'll cover that in some of the white pill stories later on tonight, why I think this is completely unjustifiable. But let's talk about some of the other results from this poll, which, again, is really concerning. And I can't believe that so many Canadians are this indoctrinated. I'd love to think that these polls are manipulated or that this doesn't represent Canadians, but I don't know. I live in my own bubble. A lot of you guys are, freedom-oriented individuals. I hang out with a lot of entrepreneurs and people that are above average from kind of a wealth perspective, or they're young and aggressive and looking to, succeed in meritocracy. And so I understand that group is going to be biased towards thinking that they'd like personal control and personal autonomy. But continuing on from the article, a majority of Canadians have little sympathy for the unvaccinated, said John Wright, executive vice president of Maru Public Opinion, which conducted the poll on January 14th and 15th. Maru surveyed an online panel of just over 1,500 Canadians. A comparable probability sample of the same size has a margin of error of plus or minus 2.5%, 19 out of 20 times. It found 2/3 of Canadians are in favor of mandatory vaccinations for everyone over the age of 5. Now, it's one thing if it's an adult, but like to just want to paint with such a broad brush blows my freaking mind. And again, where does it end, right? Is it only 2 shots? Is it an indefinite number of shots if the government and health officials decide to change or adjust the definition of what is vaccinated? Does the person that had 2 shots that then doesn't want to get boosted, are they all of a sudden now an evil person, part of the unwashed masses that also should be locked up? There are consequences to what our politicians are saying, and this is creating a very divisive atmosphere here in Canada that I hate that division. Another 37% said it would be okay to refuse to allow them access to any publicly funded hospital or medical services. Now, this is one that really drives me crazy, because essentially what you're saying is, despite the fact that we all pay into the same pot to essentially have our public healthcare system, they want to, essentially remove you from your ability to use those services simply because of one medical decision you made. Now, it's not much of a stretch to start thinking about, well, what about people that overeat, or people that smoke, or people that drink, or people that don't exercise 5 times a week, or people that don't do this, that, or the other? All of a sudden, the government's going to be able to dictate everything in your life if we start down this slippery slope. And it's time, in my opinion, that Canadians really start waking up. But I won't rant on this too long. But another part of the survey here, 61% of the respondents said it would be okay to make the unvaccinated pay a monetary healthcare surcharge on their taxes of up to $150 per month. Now, again, understand, I know some people think that like, oh, Matt's just upset because it's going to personally impact him. It's honestly the exact opposite. This shit really isn't going to make or break my day. But for the average Canadian, this could. Particularly if they're already being squeezed out of their workforce, right? If they're already being pushed out of their job or career, and now you're looking to tax them more as well, simply because of a medical decision they made. Wild. Absolutely wild. And honestly, those, in my opinion, those that support these measures are tyrants. They are fascists. They should be absolutely embarrassed. They should be, I can't imagine being comfortable saying this shit out loud. This is they're saying the quiet part out loud, in my opinion. One other point here, more than 3/4 of those surveyed, 77%, said it would be acceptable to put in place restrictions barring those who would refuse a mandatory vaccination from entering public spaces like liquor and cannabis stores, libraries, restaurants, cinemas, and retail outlets. Again, this is just silliness and absolutely ridiculous, but I encourage you guys, go read the entire article, get a firmer understanding of what this poll was all about. And again, link in the video description down below. But moving on, another red pill here I want to discuss is PCQ claims Quebec's top doctor quit over COVID measures he called bullshit. Now, this is interesting. I hadn't really put 2 and 2 together here, but I'm glad that this was covered in, again, this is from True North. The Conservative Party of Quebec, the PCQ, has alleged that the province's former top doctor, Horatio Arruda, resigned because Legault's controversial tax on the unvaccinated was a bullshit COVID-19 measure. On its social media page, the party posted a clip of Arruda dating back to October 2020. In the clip, Arruda says he would resign if ever felt the government's COVID-19 measures were bullshit, which is interesting. And so a reminder, Arruda's resignation came hours before Quebec's Premier François Legault announced a tax on unvaccinated Quebecers, and as the province was reportedly considering requiring the vaccine passport for grocery stores and pharmacies that offered delivery. Arruda had stated he wanted to be clear that he would not publicly announce COVID-19 measures that he's not comfortable with. He later added that he would resign if he felt the government's COVID-19 measures were bullshit because he preferred not losing his credibility. Now, understand in his resignation letter, he didn't say this. This is essentially just the Conservative Party of Quebec stating this, but it does seem to have a certain logical congruentness to it, the fact that he quit just hours before this announcement was made. Or he resigned, I should say. The 61-year-old doctor had been Quebec's public health director for almost 12 years when he suddenly resigned on the evening of January 10th, 2022. So if this is the case, one, I really respect someone standing behind their words and their convictions, because we need way more of that these days in Canada in particular. However, if this is the case, I personally wish he would have just went one step further and actually made a public announcement or written his resignation how he disagreed with these measures, rather than simply kind of pointing to a loss in trust, in his opinion, towards himself and some of the choices he's made in the past, which is kind of what he pointed out in his resignation letter. But again, this is really interesting. I wonder if we'll find out more down the road, maybe as things kind of cool off or as time passes. But really interesting. Again, just encourage you guys to think about that and think about, where's your line in the sand. It's something we've talked about regularly here on the channel. But again, it's important to have a line in the sand and stick behind your convictions. Don't just cave because of peer pressure or cave because of some sort of catchy marketing campaign. Make your own decisions. Become an informed citizen. That's really what being a citizen is supposed to be all about. Now, moving on from the red pill to the black pill, and this honestly, this is a black pill, in my opinion. Bit of a clown pill mix as well. Some of you already sent me this story as well, but must watch. Quebec talk show celebrates young children, saying we should call the police or on the unvaccinated. So first things first here, why use young children here for this propaganda? It seems distasteful, in my opinion. And again, it doesn't matter whether the children are for vaccines or they're for personal choice. They're children. We shouldn't really be using them as pawns here in this greater game of trying to get the unvaxxed to just heel towards the government's demands. But let's cover a little bit about this, and then I'll actually play the video for you guys as well. But Quebec talk show La Semaine des Four Julie, with host Julie Snyder, featured young children advocating for forced vaccination, along with making people submit by taking away their rights. And that's literally what happens in this clip. So I'm pretty sure I've got my audio issues sorted out here. So I think you guys should be able to hear this. And let's listen quick.
Oui, tous les deux, on a une seule dose.
Ah oui? Puis est-ce que vous êtes d'accord, vous autres, avec la vaccination obligatoire?
Oui.
Oui? Oh. Ah oui, hein?
Wow.
On dirait que je les ai drillés, Julie.
Oui. Puis qu'est-ce qu'on devrait faire avec les gens qui ne veulent pas se faire vacciner?
On devrait appeler la police.
Ouh,
Oui.
oui, oui.
S'ils n'ont pas leur vaccin, ça peut mettre beaucoup de personnes en danger. Fait que comme le gouvernement est en train de faire en ce moment, il faut leur couper petite chose à petite, jusqu'à temps qu'ils se tannent et qu'ils se fassent vacciner.
En tout cas, on a des futurs politiciens à côté de nous. Merci. Merci beaucoup à tous.
And so this is just wild, in my opinion. Again, there were subtitles there for those of you that don't speak French. I don't speak French fluently. It's been a while since grade 10 French. But essentially, they're bringing on these young children. I forget if the ages are actually stated here, but based upon it, the children who are both vaccinated were asked what their opinions of forced vaccines were, to which they gave a resounding yes. And now, again, you don't even need to speak French to kind of hear the manipulative language coming from the adults here, right? Based upon their inflection, their tonality, even body language and things like that. It's very obvious that they're leading the children. At one point in time, I believe it pans to the mother, who says, like, it seems like I'm drilling them, and she nods that she is. And again, it's one thing if you choose to get your children vaccinated. I don't have any qualms with that, right? You should make you should make an informed medical decision based upon talking with your doctor and deciding what's right for you and your family. But to be using your children as pawns here, and then to literally drill them to respond like trained dogs or seals to just bark on command what you want them to say, I don't know. I think it's gross. The children who are both vaccinated were asked what their opinions of forced vaccines were, to which they gave a resounding yes. If they don't have the vaccine, it can make a lot of people in danger, the young girl says, saying that unvaccinated people should have things cut from them until they submit to getting vaccinated. Now, personally, I can't imagine any 5-7-year-old child coming up with this narrative all themselves that, yeah, you know what? We really should just start taking away rights until people submit to the government's demands. I don't know. Maybe these children are far more advanced in their political thinking than I would have been at that age, but it just feels like they were giving parroted talking points from their parents. The audience responded with thunderous applause. The host and guests also cheered along to the children's statements. And at the end there, the host says, looks like we've got future politicians. Now, one, I'd like to call bullshit on her saying that, but actually, yeah, that makes sense. It seems like all politicians these days, to some degree, are fascists. So these children seem like they'd fit right in. with being Canadian politicians. It's hard to see the difference between their language and Trudeau's language, but I actually think it is really disgusting, and those parents should kind of be embarrassed. But again, like these kids, no one should be throwing shade at the children individually. It's in poor taste, honestly, to use them in that sense, in my opinion. Moving on, we got one more black pill story, I think, and then we've got some good a clown pill story, and then some white pills for you guys. But this is from Rebel News. Van City Bank requested proof of vaccine to cash in investment. And this is wild. If this is 100% the way it went down, this is wrong, and this is un-Canadian, and everyone should be very concerned. Things took a so essentially, this is a lady who recently had to leave her Canada Post job because she chose to make her own informed medical decision by not getting vaccinated. And things took a turn for the worse when Mackey's Bank, Van City Credit Union, added salt to her unconstitutional wounds, informing her she would have to provide proof of vaccination in order to attend the necessary appointment to cash in her RSP investments to help pay her bills. She reminded the financial institution that BC's public health orders list banks and credit unions as a place where proof of vaccination is not required. Thankfully, Van City backpedaled on their policy, and it sounds like they even gave her a telephone apology at some point in time. But this is wild. Like, if they're starting to cut you off from the banking system, there's nothing that they won't cut you off from because they consider you to be the enemy. And this is happening in real time, guys, right? These polls are coming out. Our politicians are using this divisive language. Quebec wants to tax the unvaxxed. It's very clear that if they had their druthers, they'd have no problem, they being the politicians, the government, the administration, they'd have no problem just rounding us all up and putting us in, quarantine camps for our own benefit and safety, as well as the safety of others, regardless of what the real science actually shows, right? And it's wild to me to see this when America has a much lower vaccination rate, and yet you see these stadiums with 40,000 people at a football game, more than that at bigger football games, but tens of thousands of people, and no one's wearing a mask in sight. And yet here in Canada, there's a bank that's trying to not allow you to do in-person appointments because you're unvaccinated or you can't prove your vaccination status. This is fucking disgusting. And honestly, anyone that deals with Van City, in my opinion, should at a minimum put in a complaint. And I wouldn't fault you if you decide to pull your business from them. Again, that's not to say that there's some great bank out there that you can use as an alternative, unless you choose to self-bank with something like, I don't know, Bitcoin. But we'll leave that till the white pill. Moving on from the black pill, though, let's talk about the clown pill. And this is essentially just a tweet from Rudy Havenstein, dumb as ever, and essentially talking about how CPI is complete bullshit. Now, this is in reference to American CPI, but you can essentially color with the same crayon here when it comes to Canadian CPI, which we just talked about hitting a 30-year all-time high. I believe in the United States, they're at a 40-year all-time high for inflation. This is a great visual of what nonsense the CPI is. New car prices supposedly basically unchanged from 1995 until early 2021, now spiking. CPI is not just some math geek's model, it's become an exceedingly misleading and dangerous tool. And he essentially tags, I forget, the BLS, which is the Bureau of Labor Statistics or something like that, I believe, in the States. But essentially, this chart does show it all. And now something that we need to understand is when hedonics were introduced, this is this concept that, in essence, just because a good gets more expensive doesn't necessarily mean it got more expensive. And what they mean by that simply is the idea that, if your laptop, got $200 more expensive, but it's a faster laptop, in order to have it be apples to apples, it's possible that that laptop is actually cheaper now if we were to look at like computing or RAM power. Same thing goes for automobiles. So if your automobile got safer or got some new features, there's an argument to be made that regardless of the fact that you're paying more for it, you're actually paying less for a comparable thing, even though that comparable thing may no longer exist. Does that make sense? Yeah, it's kind of why this is all clown bullshit, in my opinion. Again, inflation's real. And it's not what the government's stating for you. You guys see it every single day that you go to the gas pump. You see it every single day you go buy groceries. You see it in the cost of vehicles. And while they may try and normalize it and say things like, oh, well, like we're trying, like 2% inflation is good for you, it's not. it's not actually good for you. Having a strong store of value over extended periods of time, that is good for you. That promotes savings. That promotes good fiduciary responsibility of the individual. When we have rampant inflation, which is what we're experiencing right now and what we're likely going to continue to experience, and you could simply look at countries like Turkey to see what happens when things really start to go wrong, as a recent comparison. But jumping over to the actual St. Louis Fed's website here, I just wanted to kind of highlight again, I think it was like mid-90s when they introduced the hedonic, what do they call that again? The hedonic, it's just hedonics is what they call it. When they introduced that, we can see a dramatic increase starting mid-2021. And one of the reasons for this is when there's like severe price increases over a short period of time, it's harder for them to kind of play with the numbers. And so that's what we're starting to really see seep into even their manipulated statistics at this point in time. And that's the clown pill for the day. Moving on to the white pill. And actually, we've got a bunch of great white pills, but this first one really makes me happy. El Salvador Bitcoin wallet onboards 4 million users with NetKey partnership. So if you guys hadn't been paying attention, and you really should start paying attention to Bitcoin, El Salvador, the first country to make Bitcoin a legal tender, has onboarded 4 million users for its government-backed BTC wallet, Chivo, in partnership with digital identity provider NetKey, according to an announcement. NetKey has announced that Chivo wallet onboarded nearly 4 million new users in 45 days using the company's flagship Know Your Customer, KYC, anti-money laundering AML product, Onboard ID. The platform also claimed that it had facilitated the compliant onboarding of 70% of the country's previously unbanked population. Now, there's a lot in there to unpack, and we're not going to unpack all of it in this video, but I may not love KYC when it comes to Bitcoin and all that. However, this is a huge improvement for El Salvador. It's amazing to see what their president's doing. It's amazing to see their essentially just like giving, honestly, in my opinion, the middle finger to the IMF and other similar parties. But let's go on further in the article here. Major financial institutions, including the World Bank and the IMF, shared drastic forecasts while warning El Salvador of unwarranted economic consequences. However, the president continued to promote Bitcoin use in the country and rebuked all fear-mongering. After the IMF rejected $1 billion financial aid, essentially because he wouldn't play their game, the El Salvador government launched Bitcoin Volcanic Bond, as Bitcoin proponent Max Kaiser advised. This is absolutely just badass. This is what, I don't know, this feels like a TV script at this point in time. Now, who knows? Maybe this turns out to all be El Salvador is actually a Fed-posting nation, that this is some honeypot to try and attract a bunch of Bitcoiners and anarchists and free thinkers and individuals that just want individual autonomy. Time will tell, but I gotta be honest. I love everything I'm seeing about El Salvador, and assuming that Canada will let me out of the country in 2022, I absolutely plan on going to visit, and maybe we should even just plan a field trip. Who of you would be interested going to El Salvador, hang out there for a bit? Maybe we'll even buy a property or a compound there. And, I follow a handful of different Bitcoiners who have gone like months now in El Salvador being completely on Bitcoin. So like transacting only in Bitcoin. They go to the local store, they're paying in Bitcoin, or they're essentially paying in sats. Absolutely amazing. And I just wanted to highlight this tweet here as well from the president of El Salvador. Moody's downgrades El Salvador sovereign debt due to Bitcoin trades. And he responded, breaking, El Salvador doesn't give a fuck. And not only that, but this map actually shows how Holdador, or Hodldor, I should say, which essentially, if you guys don't know, hodl is a Bitcoin meme, which means, don't sell the dip, but instead maybe buy the dip. And so again, I love everything about this. This is a huge white pill, in my opinion, regardless of, how this plays out long term. It's great to see the unbanked being brought onto Bitcoin rather than onto some, fiat bullshit currency that's promoted by central bankers, the IMF and the World Bank. The government has also deployed hundreds of Bitcoin ATMs across the country that facilitates millions in cross-border remittance. Chivo has managed to do what banks haven't been able to do in decades. Yeah, it's fucking badass. It was really Jack Mallers who put this on my radar, and I think most people's radar, when El Salvador announced that they were going to be making Bitcoin legal tender. You guys don't follow Jack. Do yourself a giant favor. Go follow him on Twitter and check out what he's doing with his company Strike. But this is just freaking cool. And I really hope that El Salvador won't be the last country to take this approach. I think that we'll see more South and Central American countries in particular being onboarded to Bitcoin. And I think everyone involved is the better for it. And so that to me is just a giant freaking white pill. If you guys are like, yeah, I've heard about this Bitcoin, but I don't really understand it. Well, reminder, if you go to my website, and again, link in the video description down below, there's a free e-guide we put together where literally you can just like download it, you can read it, and it's like a 20-page guide. I think 20 pages, or actually, no, I guess 9 pages. And it just kind of covers all the basics when it comes to Bitcoin, particularly for Canadians that want to get involved in getting started. And it's a lot easier than you think. If you want, there's a link in the video description down below as well to Shakepay. Shakepay is one of the easiest ways to initially get onboarded and start like dabbling with Bitcoin. Now, again, if you're going to start moving significant money into Bitcoin, please, for the love of God, start doing it with self-custody. So get a cold storage wallet. But at the start, if you're just going to play with some play money, Shakepay is a great on-ramp, in my opinion. Don't worry about the cost or the fees they charge at the very beginning. Just get used to the idea, right? Just start playing with a small amount of money. And again, understand that Bitcoin's not about day trading and trying to make more fiat. It's about really just having a store of wealth. And if you guys don't like to read, reminder, we also did put together a 2-hour special video last year called Stack or Sink, Bitcoin SOS is what I called it, where essentially me and Peter and the team put together this amazing 2-hour video where we really just try and explain Bitcoin for the layman. There's also kind of some fun little jokes and skits. That's kind of our first real toying with humor. And I'm really proud of both that video as well as the e-guide. Everything's completely free there because you should just start getting involved in Bitcoin, in my opinion. So please do future you a favor and at least look into Bitcoin, if not actually starting to stack some sats. But moving on, let's also talk on some other white pill news. And so this is an opinion article from the Hill Times. And, it's just great to see people being open to changing their opinion sometimes. So the title here is Cowardly Canadian Leaders Point Fingers at Unvaccinated. And so, who was this by again? This article was written by Erica Eiffel. So essentially, Calgary, imagine a Black woman who writes about and advocates against inequities, who rails against injustice with an emphasis on Black experience, siding with the anti-vaxxers she cussed out only a few months prior. And she actually links to an article where she kind of cussed out anti-vaxxers. But here we are, politics make for strange bedfellows. Further on in the article, and again, I encourage you guys to read the entire thing, but since I'm writing this column on Dr. Martin Luther King Day, allow me to throw in a quote that you won't see on your organization's intranet commemoration. We need leaders not in love with money, but in love with justice, not in love with publicity, but in love with humanity. By that metric, all government leadership in Canada has failed, and instead of taking individual responsibility for these failures, the cowardice endemic in authority points the finger at the unvaccinated. 100% agree. And while I won't necessarily agree with all of her opinions in general or in this article, again, it's just great to see someone being open to new information and adjusting their perspective. And I think it's important that those of us that, maybe when we see articles like this feel a little bit vindicated, that we, with open arms, welcome others into the fold, because there's a lot of people that got double vaxxed that only wanted to do the right thing that are now starting to question the corporate press and the government's narrative. And they need support. That's why this entire show, the Maple Pill, exists, is because it's scary and lonely going through this journey of having to essentially, in my opinion, reorganize your interpretation of reality and what's trustworthy and who the good guys are if you're going it alone. And so I think everyone could use allies in this journey. And that's really what I'm trying to do with this video and this channel as well. Hopefully you guys enjoy it. But finishing up on this article, it is this, that in fueling vaccine apartheid, which has more impact on the continuing threat posed by COVID-19 than vaccine hesitancy. What is clear is that government authorities have no clue how to deal with this pandemic, which has gotten new life, pun intended, with Omicron. For months, we have been told that the vaccine would bring us back to normal, and then Omicron happened. With decision makers like these, it's a wonder we have a healthcare system at all. yeah, it truly is a wonder that the wheels stay on at all on this card. But again, I appreciate people that are speaking out, that are sharing their opinions, and that are open to new information. And then one more white pill here, guys. 3 white pills in one day. It's a good day. England ends, and this is from Zero Hedge, courtesy of the Epic Times, but England ends all COVID passports, mask mandates, and work restrictions. So effective immediately, the UK government is no longer asking people to work from home. The COVID pass mandate for nightclubs and large events won't be renewed when it expires on January 26th. And from Thursday, indoor mask wearing will no longer be compulsory anywhere in England. The requirement for secondary school pupils to wear masks during class and in communal areas will also be removed from the Department for Education's national guidance. Roaring cheers from lawmakers could be heard in the House of Commons following Johnson's announcements on masks. Yeah, I watched the video. It was great to hear them cheer, but like there is a bit of irony there in regards to the fact that they're cheering. Oh, what's going on with my highlight there? But anyways, it was great to hear them cheering, but however, at the same time, it was a little disheartening when it came to the fact that they're all still wearing masks. I feel like it would have had a much greater impact if they actually had thrown their masks off into into the, I don't know, just thrown them off like a graduation ceremony with your caps. As COVID becomes endemic, we will need to replace legal requirements with advice and guidance, urging people with the virus to be careful and considerate of others, the Prime Minister said. Yeah, I mean, sure as hell would have been a lot nicer had we gotten here sooner, but it is great to see the UK apparently taking steps in the right direction. And God willing, we see the spread to the rest of the Commonwealth sooner than later, because us Canucks and the Aussies certainly need it as well. So that's it for our stories of the day, but I want to leave you guys, as always, kind of on a high note. So we've got the meme of the day as well. This is from Conspiracy Bot, and again, links to everything in the video description down below. But it's a basic Chad looking at a monkey. You're such a dumb animal. Dumb animal responds, don't you have to pay taxes to pedophiles to avoid being thrown in a cage or killed? Yeah, that one cuts a little bit too close to the truth for comfort, but it is funny. And so otherwise, I hope you guys are having a great Wednesday. I hope that, maybe you're coming off a bit of a white pill high here as well. Feels like there's a little bit of momentum. It feels like the narrative might be shifting a little bit. At the same time, the price of freedom is ever vigilance. So we can't just, hang up our hats and go back to normal. We actually need to continue to speak out. We need to continue to have tough conversations, and we need to stand behind our convictions now more than ever before. But I really appreciate those of you that are doing it. Those of you that send me encouraging DMs, those of you that watch and share this on social media, because sharing is caring, because we know the algorithm is going to do me no favors based upon the subject matter we talk about. But I don't care. If this hits a handful of people, I'm very happy to just provide perspective, solace, comfort, camaraderie, whatever you need, because it can be a very lonely journey depending upon where you find yourself and, what your friends and family are like these days. But I appreciate you guys. Smash the like button, hit subscribe. I'll see you in the next video. And a reminder, if you want to find a community of like-minded individuals, check out the Problems and Profits Discord, completely free, and just a bunch of great people sharing their thoughts and perspectives on everything going on in the world these days. But actually, because I didn't go super long, let's quickly touch upon some of the chats. So again, appreciate those of you that jumped in the chat. We've got Peter, we've got Benjamin. Higher rates would kill the economy. We would never get back onto our feet. Yeah, I don't disagree with you on that. I think that it's, the idea that we'd see a 1.75% interest rate increase in a single year, while even if it's completely justified, and someday we're going to need to increase interest rates, in my opinion, I just can't imagine central bankers and politicians having the balls to actually pull it off, but we'll see. Peter saying that's insane. The future politician comment, as the kid discusses, forcing until submission. Yep. It's absolutely insane. It's really concerning. It's not normal. Sean Sound here says El Salvador sounds fun. All right, let's do it, guys. Let's put together a group field trip to El Salvador, assuming that Canada will let us out to play this summer or later in the year. Abby says, thanks again, Matt. Appreciate the comment, Abby. And Kevin saying, thanks, Matt. Super informative as always. Well, that's really all I could hope for. I appreciate you guys supporting me and supporting the maple pill here because, again, they say a spoonful of sugar helps the medicine go down. Sometimes these red and black and clown pills are tough to swallow, but hopefully if we're going to have some sugar, it might as well be maple sugar, right? Appreciate you guys. We'll see you in the next video, and I'll be back tomorrow.